The wedding dress you see in this photograph was never worn. The story of the young woman who prepared this dress reveals the greatest fear experienced by millions of American families. Do you have a similar story in your family? If so, you can send your story us.
My name is Mary Elizabeth Thompson. In the cold December of 1943, we lived in a small house in Boston. I could see the icy waters of Massachusetts Bay from the window. And every morning when I woke up, I imagined the face of James fighting for me somewhere across the ocean. James Michael O'Connor. I was 19 when I first saw him. It was the summer of 1941, at our neighborhood church festival. Tall, broad-shouldered, his brown curly hair shone like gold in the sunlight. His green eyes crinkled when he smiled, creating a small dimple in his left cheek. That day he wore a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and neatly pressed dark blue trousers. His hands had small calluses from working, but when his fingers touched mine, it felt like the softest touch in the world. Everything changed after the Pearl Harbor attack. James was drafted and sent to the Pacific Front in March 1942. Before leaving, on that spring evening in the small park downtown, where flowers were just beginning to bloom, he knelt down and proposed to me. He took out the pearl ring that my mother used to wear from his pocket. The ring was a bit too big for me, but at that moment it was the most perfect ring in the world. "We'll get married when I return, Mary," he had said, the determination in his voice calming me. "When this war is over, I'll make you my wife." The months that followed were spent writing letters. He sent letters regularly every week, and I responded the same way. In his letters, he talked about the beauty of the Pacific Islands, his friends, the strange foods he ate, but he never talked about the real face of war. In my letters, I told him about my daily life, the changes in our neighborhood, the meals my mother cooked. But I never mentioned how scared I was, how much I prayed for him at night. In the summer of 1943, he began talking about wedding plans in his letters. "The war will end by the end of this year, Mary," he wrote. "We'll get married in the spring of 1944. You should start making preparations to..." That's when everything began. First, my mother and I went looking for a wedding dress. In a small tailor shop in downtown Boston, we met Signora Benedetta, an elderly Italian woman, short, gray-haired, with hands that moved incredibly fast. This woman exclaimed, "Ah, che bella." As soon as she saw me, she said that my being slender, tall, with brown hair and blue eyes inspired her. That's when everything began. First, my mother and I went looking for a wedding dress. In a small tailor shop in downtown Boston, we met Signora Benedetta, an elderly Italian woman, short, gray-haired, with hands that moved incredibly fast. This woman exclaimed, "Ah, che bella." As soon as she saw me, she said that my being slender, tall, with brown hair and blue eyes inspired her. Signora Benedetta would design a special wedding dress for me. White silk fabric, pearl embroidery, lace details. I went to fittings every week, and each time the dress became more beautiful. While the woman measured me, I constantly talked about James. I told her what kind of man he was, how we met, how beautifully he danced. Signora Benedetta would listen with a smile and say amor vero, meaning true love. When autumn came, the dress was almost ready. Signora Benedetta was adding the final touches. She had added lace pieces from my mother's wedding dress to the hem of my dress. "Something old," she said in her English. She had prepared a special place on the collar of the dress, for the necklace James had given me. For something blue, she had sewn a small blue ribbon inside the dress. Wedding preparations continued at home. My mother and I were planning the wedding menu, preparing the guest list, reserving the wedding date at the church. We were constantly meeting with James's family, getting their opinions too. Everything was perfect. We were carefully planning every detail because this wedding would be a celebration not only of us but also of the end of the war. When winter came, James's letters decreased a bit. But I wasn't worried because I knew the war was intensifying. In his last letter, he had written, "I'll be home soon, Mary. Let's have our wedding in May." When I received that letter, My dress was also completely ready. Signora Benedetta had cried during the final fitting. "Sei bellissima," she had said, "you're so beautiful." I kept my wedding dress hanging in the large closet in my mother's bedroom at home. Every day I looked at it, caressed its fabric, and imagined that beautiful day. I held it up in front of the mirror and imagined myself. I tried to see James's face on our wedding day. I imagined the happiness in his eyes, his smile. When February 1944 came, we decided to print the wedding invitations. My mother and I went to the stationery store and chose the most beautiful invitations. They were cream-colored, gold-plated, with small rose patterns on them. The wedding ceremony of Mary Elizabeth Thompson and James Michael O'Connor would be written on them. In early March, I received James's last letter. It started with, "My dear Mary, as always. Everything is going well here. My friends are tired of listening to me talk about you constantly," he wrote laughingly. "When I return home, I will live with the pride of making you my wife. Is your dress ready? Are you ready? Because I'm very ready." After that letter, I didn't hear from him for 3 weeks. But I tried not to worry. It was normal for letters to be delayed under war conditions. I continued with my wedding preparations. I met with the florist, talked to the bakery, arranged the final details at the church. March 29, 1944, was a Wednesday. I was going to my dress's final fitting that morning. Signora Benedetta was going to make a small adjustment to the shoulder area. As I was getting ready to leave the house, the doorbell rang. My mother opened the door, and I heard voices from upstairs. A man's voice, an official voice. When I went downstairs, 2 men in military uniforms were standing at the door. They had an envelope in their hands. My mother had covered her mouth with her hand, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. At that moment, I understood everything. The warmth in my heart suddenly froze. I couldn't breathe. "Miss Thompson," said one of the soldiers, "are you the fiancée of James Michael O'Connor?" I nodded. I had no strength to speak. "I'm sorry, ma'am. James Michael O'Connor was killed in action under enemy fire in the Pacific on March 15, 1944. The world spun around me. My legs couldn't support me. My mother ran and came to my arms, but I felt nothing. Nothing was real. This was a dream. James couldn't be gone. He had promised me. We were going to get married. We were going to get married in May." After the soldiers left, I went upstairs to my room. My wedding dress was still there, white and beautiful. But now it had no meaning. I would never be able to wear that dress. James would never see me in that dress. That day we called Signora Benedetta and canceled the appointment. She cried on the phone too. "Mi dispiace tanto," she said. "I'm so sorry. The wedding preparations were stopped. The invitations were not sent. The church reservation was canceled. Flowers were not ordered. The cake was not made." The days after that day passed in a blur. Neighborhood women constantly came to the house. They brought casserole dishes, soup bowls, desserts. Everyone tried to console me, but none of their words could bring James back. One of the neighbor women, Dorothy Walsh, whispered to me while hugging me, "Be strong, girl. James would want you to be strong." But I didn't feel strong. I just felt empty and tired. In the first weeks, I couldn't dare to look at my wedding dress. I didn't even want to open the closet door. But at the end of the 3rd week, I couldn't stand it and looked at it. There it stood, pure white, perfect, never worn. The fabric still smelled new. The pearl embroidery sparkled in the sunlight. I reached out and touched its fabric. It was so soft as James's touch. That night I cried for the first time, really cried. Until now I had held back my tears because my mother was also very sad and I was trying to be strong for her. But that night, standing in front of my wedding dress, seeing how all my dreams had shattered, I couldn't stand it. I cried for hours. I remembered every word James had said to me, thought about everything we had planned to do together. In mid-April, James's personal belongings were sent home. In a small box, there was his pocket watch, wallet, a few letters, and the photograph of me I had sent him. When I took out the photograph, I saw that its edges were worn. so he must have been looking at it constantly. This both made me happy and made me even sadder. Among James's letters was a letter he had started writing to me, but never sent. The letter read, "My dear Mary, every night I look at the stars and think of you. Everything here is very difficult, but knowing that I will see you again keeps me going. I dream of the years we will spend together. I imagine we will have children. We will have a big house. When we get old, we will sit on the porch and tell our memories. I love you so much, Mary." After reading this letter, I didn't know what to do. I had read James's dreams, but those dreams would never come true. We wouldn't have children. We wouldn't have a big house. When we got old, we wouldn't be able to sit together and tell our memories. When we entered May, as our actual wedding day, May 15th, approached, that day was terrible. I stayed in bed all day. My mother tried to get me up, but I couldn't get up. That day, James and I should have stood face to face in the church, said we loved each other, put on the rings, kissed. None of this would happen. In June, Signora Benedetta called me. I could hear the sadness in her voice. She asked me what I wanted to do with the dress. She asked if I wanted to sell it for another girl. But I said no. That dress was only for me. It was made for James. No one else could wear it. Throughout the summer, I occasionally looked at the dress. Sometimes I held it up to myself in front of the mirror. I closed my eyes and imagined James standing in front of me. I imagined his smile, his hands, his voice. But when I opened my eyes, there was only me in the mirror, alone, with the wedding dress. At the end of August, we began to hear news of the Normandy landings. It was being said that the war would end in Europe. People were happy, celebrating. But I couldn't be happy. James wouldn't see the end of the war. He wouldn't return home. He wouldn't celebrate victory with me. In September, I started school. I was continuing courses to become a teacher. People told me I needed to build a new life, but I wasn't ready. I didn't want to forget James. I wanted to keep his memory alive. When autumn came, the dress was still hanging in my closet. 8 months had passed since we received the news of James's death. Sometimes I look at it and think how naive I was. I thought the war would end quickly, that James would return safe and sound. I never thought he could die. That dress is no longer just a dress, but a symbol of lost dreams. Every time I look at it, I remember James, his green eyes, his smile, the words he said to me. "We'll get married when I return, Mary," he had said, but he didn't return. He will never return. As winter approached, one day I took the dress out of the closet and spread it on the bed. The fine fabric, delicate embroidery, every detail was perfect. Signora Benedetta's labor, my mother's lace, everything was there. But it no longer had any meaning. I put my hand on the dress and made a promise to James. "I will never forget you, and this dress will stay here, for your memory. Because I know that one day when I'm old, I will look at this dress and remember James Michael O'Connor. I will remember the love I dreamed of living with him, but could never live. And maybe, just maybe, he will be remembering me too."
This story shows that war was not only fought on the front lines, but also opened deep wounds in homes. Mary's wedding dress is a symbol of the hopes and dreams experienced by millions of women. The war ended, but the pain continues. We must not forget these stories. We must keep their pain alive in our memories. If you have such stories in your family, share them with us.